Hello, my name is John Reynolds. On this episode of Extraordinary Life Stories, I'm talking with Anna Whitehouse. Anna is a mother of two, a journalist, podcast host, best-selling author and trailblazing entrepreneur behind Flex, and goes by the name of Mother Pukka. Anna's entrepreneurial journey was as a result of sheer frustration at the lack of flexibility with working hours, despite highlighting a solution to her employer and being turned down. Why? Because Anna's employer felt it would open up the floodgates for others to want flexible working hours. Anna took the brave action to quit her job and then set about opening the floodgates. Her refreshing authenticity and brutal honesty has had a huge instant hit with gaining massive traction with online followers, and she's never looked back since. I reckon Anna is only just getting started. Let's get into it. Anna, thank you so much for joining me.
Hi.
Let me ask you, who is Anna Whitehouse?
Oh, the big question. I wish I actually knew. So I'm the founder of Mother Pukka, which is the bedrock of a campaign called Flex Appeal, which is a campaign to fight for flexible working for everyone, not just exhausted mums like me. I'm also a radio presenter, but like my main job, Mother Nature's biggest task, is I'm a mother.
Yeah, well, so take me back to a young Anna starting out in your career. What were the early inspirations and influences that ultimately shaped your career?
So I trained to be a barrister way back, and I did my mini pupillage just up the road. And I remember looking, like the optics are important in the working world, looking around and going, where are the women beyond 30? And I was 21, and I remember thinking, I don't see a way through to have children here. As a 21-year-old, already curtailing my career at that point. And I decided to go into journalism because I thought, well, there's some flexibility around freelancing.
Yeah.
And so that's really where my journey began. I would not be here today if I hadn't had one baby in Amsterdam and one baby in London. Because the contrast between those two experiences, you follow the status quo, right? When you're in it, you just think, this is acceptance. This is how it is. Women fall out of the workforce, 54,000 women every single year for daring to have a baby. But I'd experienced it in a different place in Holland. And that was really what pushed me. I think the day that my flexible working request was rejected, that was the moment where I just thought, there is another way. I'm going to quit and leave my job because I cannot raise my two girls for that same kind of blockade.
So what I love about that as well, which ultimately makes you an entrepreneur. How many people are stuck in a job and just keep going and take it, you know, and have done in all the previous generations, whereas for you, that was clearly the straw that broke the camel's back, if you like, but you took that decision, so enough. And the story ultimately it was someone got their briefcase stuck in the train doors and made you 12 minutes late, you were charged £1 an hour, and you just think, how unfair is this? I'm trying my best to...
I think every parent or caregiver or somebody who needs some flexibility in their work has that moment where you go, I'm broken here. And I saw my little daughter on one of those primary coloured chairs meant for a little infant, Paw Patrol backpack on, big Bambi eyes, teary, because I was late by sort of 3 minutes because, like I said, this catalogue of errors that had meant that when I was running that parental gauntlet to get back to my child for nursery pickup, which is inflexible, 6 p.m, I remember thinking, I'm not broken, actually, the system's broken. And that was really, I think, the moment. Really sadly, not for myself. I never did it for myself. And I wish more activists, I wish more campaigners, more entrepreneurs almost did it for themselves. You end up doing it for your children because you think, I am not raising those two little girls to work harder in their ABCs, you know, lift them into their maybe GCSEs, A-levels, to get to university perhaps. Do you remember when you had that first job, and you got a computer and a phone and you felt like a CEO? The drive to become anything that you raise those children to be, knowing that there is this blockade the minute a woman dares to have a baby. So I couldn't raise those girls, and I'm sure you feel the same with your kids.
Yeah, massively.
Can't raise them for that fall. And that was really, I became an accidental activist, not an intentional activist.
Yeah, but you did it, you took the action. And as a dad to two teenage daughters, you're a massive inspiration for myself, for my wife, you know, who's in the build up to me talking to you today, has been sort of telling me more and more things about you. And it's that, not only did you take action, But then when you started, and I want you to tell me, go on your journey, you ultimately just brought so many people in who were feeling the same, but hadn't perhaps got a solution or were not brave enough to be able to do what you did. And of course, that's created a huge following of people that see that authenticity and also force changes to happen. I mean, talk me through that.
Well, I went from one day posting, do you remember when Instagram was just like avocado toast and nice pictures from your holiday?
Breakfast, lunch, dinner, yeah.
Overnight, I went from avocado toast to I'm hacked off. Like, I had so many friends who were not even actively stepping back from their jobs, just expectedly stepping back from their jobs. And I remember thinking, I've got 62 followers here. Most of them were probably fake accounts from my mum. And I remember thinking, I need to just do something here, because if I don't, I will be here in 20 years' time seeing my daughters go through this, and it will just be a pain beyond anything, because my parents raised me to think you can do anything, you can be anything, until actually you have someone. And that is, set up to fail. I think it resonated with people because who on earth can actually stand up to their company when your mortgage is reliant on your pay packet? Who on earth can be an accidental activist within their own organisation when you don't have a choice? NDAs, gagging orders, there's such a weight of shutting up across the board. Suppression. And I think I became this portal, this voice, like I said, accidentally, for that female rage. It was like, I think we felt like, do you remember in Margaret Atwood's novels, the sort of 1954 Handmaid's Tale, where we're of our husband? And I think there were definite echoes of that, like, no, we're of ourselves and we're not going to let the working world block us. And I think the second point on that was, I remember reading a quote which really drove everything I've done to date, including legislative change, from Douglas Copeland, the author. And he said, I truly believe we're going to look back on the 9 to 5 like we do child slavery in the 18th century. And he's totally right. The TED Talk I did was all about the parallels between the working world and battery farms for chickens. That, you let chickens run free, they lay bigger eggs.
More nutritious eggs.
They're more
healthy.
Nutritious eggs. They're bigger, better. They sell more. They make more profit.
So
and so it was almost looking at office spaces, the optics of it again. You've got employees just sectioned off in little boxes. You let them run free. You trust them. You empower them to work for you as a company and to be entrepreneurs in their own right within your company. You're going to, get bigger eggs, but your productivity is going to go up.
100%. And why would you not want that?
Yeah.
It's that whole archaic kind of employee with the sort of suppressing boss organisation that's just like, you do what we need you to do and you stay silent and so on. And you must have had an avalanche of support and outpouring of emotion from people as well. Because did that surprise you? Did that also fulfill you in some sense of, oh, I'm onto something here?
Do you know what I have loved the most is, yes, there's been swathes of absolutely exhausted mothers getting in touch. Flex Appeal started in such a primal, maternal, visceral, painful place. Like I said, I say accidental, but it was probably intentional, fueled by rage.
Yeah, you didn't know what was going to happen as a result.
I didn't know where it was going to go, but I couldn't sit by and watch this happen. So I get a bit emotional talking about it. I was so angry, and I think I was angry that I had been set up to fail almost, even by my parents, and I love them dearly. And I think I opened up this crack, this hairline fracture within the system that have been suppressing women, that have been telling us you are only useful until you have a baby, then we're going to write you out. Don't even get me started on, ageism and the menopause. Like, the working world isn't set up for female biology. From periods to menopause, the system we're in was born in the Industrial Revolution, where men and women earned the bacon and women cooked it, right? That is not happening anymore. So it needs to shift.
100%. And it's awesome what you mean. And actually, flipping slightly to a different point, education curriculum. So look at how you've highlighted that broken system that creates what is so obvious to people now that was needed, was flexible working hours. I haven't used a Bunsen burner since school or Pythagoras in anything I've ever done. We're learning about stuff that we don't use in our adult lives, but we don't learn financial literacy. We don't learn self-development.
Right.
You know, for you to have gone on and taken the actions you've done to then be doing all the different things, best-selling author, podcast, all these different things, you've worked on yourself. Why is that not being taught in school? Because that's also a key part of the education process, and you're an inspiration in that for young women to be inspired to actually, there's life beyond the Bunsen burner.
There is. Well, I think it begins, taking it right the way back, with sex ed, bizarrely. You know, like, I'm from Holland and I grew up there, and we had something called Lentekriebels, which is a week of sex ed when you're 4 years old, where a pregnant woman comes into your classroom and you get to ask her any question you want as a 4-year-old. You know, like, how did the baby get in there? There's always somebody who says, why is your nose so big? You know, like, it's kind of a free space.
Yeah.
And then you move on to consent.
Yeah.
And then you move on. All of these things, if you think about them, are relevant to our biology. You know, consent is relevant to the workplace. Like, educating, empowering kids in terms of the reality of the working world. You then, you know, weave in financial insecurity, and, you know, you've got many gaps out there: pensions gap, pleasure gap, gender pay gap, sleep gap, so many gaps, glaring holes of inequality that all feed into each other. And I think we have absolute responsibility within the educational system to stop just wheeling out the same, you know, categories of information. Like, I mean, to be honest, home economics, I don't need to know how to make a lasagna. I need to know how to manage my finances. I'll Google how to, you know, make macaroni cheese.
Yeah.
I would like to know why, actually, age 16, I was told and made to feel like store cards were free money. You know, that I wasn't educated enough to push back against those sales tools to vulnerable kids.
Yeah.
We opened that conversation up on Mother Pukka. And thousands of women said that's what set them on a back foot in terms of their careers. So it has a complete impact on the whole. And we're not raised to rise, to be absolutely honest. In my day, my daughters refer to me as living in the olden days now, which is devastating. But it was only the girls that did home ec, which is, again, you know, the gendered worry around that. And that's like the 90s, you know?
Yeah, not that long ago.
And the boys did DIY, you know, and that's why I can't stand pink jobs, blue jobs. And you look at, in the pandemic, who stepped down from their jobs. It was invariably women. 54% more women stepped down from their careers than men in that time. Because when you look at it on the table, whose job is more important? It will be whose job is financially more important. Because of unequal pay and the gender pay gap, it will be a man's job.
Sure.
So these women are in a rock and a hard place, in a cul-de-sac of discrimination, and can't break through it without these kind of conversations, to be honest.
And which you're doing. And I think there's a key thing that decision you made, that you're taking an action to ultimately fuel you with purpose, and probably through a need to try and force the change in anger, frustration that then gets felt by everyone else, and to make sure your kids don't go through that. But in context of that purpose that took you forward, certain people seem to lack that. Did you always have it? Because for me, it's like sitting here now, there's so much you have gone and done, and I want to know what else is next. I can almost feel it, like you just ideas and creativity, and that journalist side of you as well, right? That just is like kind of creative. But because you've had so much people come to you because of your authenticity, driven by that purpose, you know, I want to know whether that's inspired people that have come to you that have said, I'm now doing this. I've now changed this. Because you see that in the public eye, and you share it so articulately. That must inspire so many people.
Do you know, the most powerful example of that was we did a pilot scheme with Birmingham Women's Hospital, and it was called ward-led rostering, because you can imagine the one place you would imagine flexible working wouldn't work is in the NHS. How on earth can you do it in situations of life and death, right?
Sure.
So we trialled this new system, which was ward-led rostering, where you empower all the nurses to sort out their roster together. Instead of going to the equivalent of the matron, please sir, can I go and see my daughter's nativity play? they were arranging it amongst themselves and coming to the matron and going, by the way, Sally's covering my shift.
Yeah.
By the way. So then that gave the matron more space to do her job instead of the administration of that. And the thing that sends chills down my spine was when that was trialled, at the end of that period, we found out that wards that were led more flexibly had lower death rates. So when people think this is about a fluffy nice to have, like you imagine even 5 years ago, you say flexible working and it was almost like the equivalent of a ping pong table in reception. It was like a craft beer tap. It was a nice to have. It was a fluffy little extra. No, it's a fundamental change to the fabric of our working world. And if the NHS can do it, and when I heard from the matron, not to answer your question,
fulfillment.
It was, do you know what, if we can do it here, you categorically can do it in Lord Sugar's empire. Yes. You know, you categorically can do it in these Battery Farm corporate offices. You know, you can
You've proven it.
In a more human way. And that's my final point, is I'm now hearing from managers who are going, through your work, we're now leading with EQ as well as IQ, emotional intelligence as well as intellect. They come together, they're intelligence, and they need to unite for us to create a working world that works for everyone.
I love it. And ultimately, that's been successful. There's a key part to you that I'd say, you know, from the best-selling books to sitting here now with so many things going on that are going so well. Sitting here now, what is your definition of success?
I think my definition of success is continuing the legacy from my dad. So, sorry, he was always at the school gates at 3:15 every single day. And I always thought that was the norm. And what he did was he quit his high-flying legal career because he wanted more time with his family. And this was in the 80s. And he had colleagues, friends, managers, people thinking he had mental health issues, thinking that, what are you doing, you crazy fool, giving up this corporate life to spend more time with your family? And what I realized as I grew up as a little girl was that that was not the norm. To have your dad at the school gates was an anomaly. And actually, as I grew older, I think that's where Flex Appeal, where this campaign really began, was in going, that was my norm, but the status quo is so far from that. And I really want to bridge that gap. So success to me is continuing that. If you talk about bravery, that was considered the most emasculating thing my dad could do. And there is nothing more masculine than looking after your own children. So success to me is any man looking at this. It's not about women.
No, well said.
It's about men. And my final point is, while I am a woman and I have children, I have been dismissed, underestimated, pushed aside consistently because of that definition of who I am. But the biggest research project we did to date was our Flexonomics report with Sir Robert McAlpine. And the reason they got on board was because of the 1,400 construction workers who died by suicide between 2014 and 2018. So it's not about knackered mums, it's about humans. And predominantly here, I want men on the table. So success to me is the conversation, the equality of this conversation being about both.
Yeah, awesome. You've articulated it so well. And actually for me, as a dad of two girls, I was setting up a business when Leslie, my wife, was pregnant, and I had so many people saying to me, and by default, the business I was setting up, I was talking to ultra high net worths. So they'd been successful financially, but when I told them I was about to be a dad, they said, John, if there's one thing I got wrong, if there's one thing I do again, if there's one regret I've got, like a worn record, is I wasn't there for my kids. I wasn't able to. Now, don't get me wrong, tech advancements, people like yourself that are forcing those sort of changes, the whole Flex thing, the amount of people in the office we're in here that have said, oh, Anna, God, you know, that changed so much for me over the last couple of years of how I was working and so on. I made that time to collect the kids and be around because I didn't want that as my regret. I made a conscious decision to try and be successful in business, but also ultimately be around as well. And then touching on the whole mental health side of things, you know, I was fortunate enough in context of my last few years, I wasn't the only guy at the gate. There is a shift there, it's coming. I think dads get it, they want to be involved. You know, it's this whole, you said it, blue jobs, pink jobs. I love it. I love being around. I haven't missed those golden years. I'm still there, you know, still there trying to be around as much as possible. But from a mental health point of view, we've seen such a seismic shift. You know, I'm spending so much more time on self-development. I spend time trying to keep myself fit because I know it keeps me mentally fit. How does that work with you? You know, there's a lot of people that say to be successful, you've got to be up at 5 a.m. and read a book and run a marathon by 8 o'clock. Where do you sit with that, and how have you managed your own personal and physical fitness?
Well, I think anybody with kids sees those interviews with CEOs up at 5, going to the gym. You're like, you don't have Paw Patrol ringing in your ears at 6 a.m. You don't know what it's like, mate.
Might be on in the background.
Yeah, in the background.
No, I get it.
I would say I haven't actually protected my mental health in all of this. I think when you become emotionally involved in a campaign, you know, you can actually supersede your own needs. I'm, you know, now divorced, and I would say my relationship was directly associated with the drive to change. Yeah. I think there is collateral damage along the way. But what I have started to do is listen to my own advice, which is mad when you think about it. Often you go on a sort of juggernaut-like drive to change things legislatively, culturally, emotionally. And actually, success to me, mental health protection to me, is as simple as on my out of office, when I finish work where I know I'm not going to be available for a period of 3-4 hours, I detail, I'm out of the office, I'm giving the kids bath time, I'm reading them a story about the Gruffalo, and I'll be back in a couple of hours. I humanise the punctuation points of my working life, so that they are not separate, so there is no shame. Like Robert Rietbroek, the former CEO of PepsiCo in New Zealand, he has a leaving loudly policy where he's like, please can everybody say really loudly why they're leaving. I don't want any coats left on chairs with people skulking out of the office, the shame of existing outside of work. Like,
fair play to him.
He said, it's a free thing any company can implement. Just humanise. I'm off to pick up my daughters. Yeah. Obviously, nobody wants personal gynecological appointments hollowed out into the office, but I think that human nature, that coming back to that emotional intelligence, EQ, costs nothing. Ward-led rostering, like I said with the NHS, costs nothing. Flexible working is free. Yeah. It's a mindset shift. It's not actually a financial structural shift.
Yeah, no, well said. And I think that whole shift is so good to see. And I think just going back to yourself and the journey you're on, how important is it for you to be present in the moment? Because some of the things I've read and watched and listened to before we met, they resonate. You know, they resonate with my wife. They resonate with all the people that clearly love you, because you're just saying it raw. You're saying it as it is. And you know, there's been certain things that haven't been allowed to be said for whatever reason, that now everyone's like, God, if only we'd known. If you could give advice to a young Anna, to someone starting out right now, with that context of living in the moment, the maturity you've got, what would that be?
I did a post yesterday actually that hits that point on the nose.
I've not seen it.
It was called Things I Regret. And it was, I regret thinking parents were slackers for leaving the office at 4:59 p.m. I regret taking my engagement ring off before interviews for fear that they'd think I would be having a baby soon. I feared and regret miscarrying at my desk for fear that my boss would think I was trying, which might scupper a promotion landing. I regret not asking about maternity benefits in the same breath as gym memberships in interviews. I have so many regrets as a young woman, even though I couldn't change the landscape I was in. And change can simply be companies saying maternity and paternity in the same breath, offering up maternity benefits alongside fairly empty 15% gym membership discounts. It's about recognizing that Mother Nature's biggest task isn't a recreational side hustle. We were speaking earlier about the fact that fewer women are having babies now, we're having them later, we're struggling. And that is going to create an economic crash in 20 years' time. There won't be enough employees I'm going to use Lord Sugar again, in Lord Sugar's empire to keep it propped up. So,
let alone the UK economy and across the world. It's a global issue.
Completely kind of short-circuited, sort of small-minded thought process of, oh God, she might get pregnant, so let's get her out. No, we know that the primary way to close the gender pay gap, this is from the Equality and Human Rights Commission, is flexible working. And all I'm going to say is I was banging this drum for years. It got to the 21st of March 2020. The companies, even days before, had gone, love what you do, Anna. This flexible working thing is wonderful. Won't work for us, unfortunately, but keep going. Equality's lovely. And on that day, I remember it was seismic. It was like a sledgehammer was taken to our working world. A working world, again, that was born on the Industrial Revolution when men earned that bacon and women cooked it. A sledgehammer was taken to the world, and the companies that did not zoom in and log on in the pandemic had to shut down. And I think
were massively suffering.
Completely suffering. And I think that's my final point on this, is it's so interesting when companies have said, it won't be possible for us. So interesting what is indeed possible when cold, hard cash is at play. And I think that's been the shift. We are now there with these breeze blocks that have been knocked down, rebuilding it in a different formation for our kids. And they will not be, your daughters and my daughters will not be one of the 54,000 women like me that gets pushed out for daring to procreate.
And there's a massive message there for me that I've already kind of reiterated in content how important it is, which is that taking action. And you took those actions that then the timing, zeitgeist timing in context of the fact that who wanted a pandemic? Of course not, but it just forced the issue. Unfortunately, in context of likely to have been something that was more positive, but it created the scenario where actually this is so needed and it's been embraced. You know, there's an element of, well, actually there's key statistics that show that women entrepreneurs get and founders get something like 2% of the funding that's out there against males. So there's an equality conversation here because you were a voice banging on the door, not being listened to. Now, full circle, you know, I can see how influential you are and you're only growing with that. What needs to happen in that business world to allow our daughters growing up to actually be heard, be seen, and grow into a world that should be more equal for women?
I have a case study on this that I think will give the best, I suppose the best understanding of that question. Is there's a guy called James Clary at Coutts Bank, and he simply did this with his team. He sat his 40-strong team down and looked him in the eye and just went, what's the rub in your day? Like, what stresses you out? And it ranged from, I don't see my girlfriend enough, to I've got a pet iguana, to I need to walk my dog, to my grandfather has Alzheimer's and he loves a cottage pie on a Tuesday. You know, these human reasons. And he then sat them, much like ward-led rostering in the NHS, he sat them down and he said, can everyone just discuss what they need? Talk about what you need and try and cover each other where you can. So he stepped back from it at that point. 10 minutes for each person. Within 3 months, productivity had gone up 40%. It was like he'd released these battery hens from their battery pens and they were running free and, again, coming back to the egg analogy, producing much better eggs. It was just more fruitful within that company. And he was described initially as going rogue, you know, like going against the grain, not seeking approval. And that would be my answer to that question, is we need more managers, we need people to go rogue for business benefit. This is not, again, just about employees or mummies needing more time with their Weetabix covered children. It's about people being happier, healthier, more productive in your workforce and ultimately making more money. That's the bottom line.
No one loses. It's a win-win situation.
Yeah, go rogue.
So
I want everyone to go rogue.
Yeah, no, I love it. I think you heard it here. What's next for you? I can feel you're brimming with positivity and ideas. What's next that you can tell me?
It's a cultural and legislative rebuilding of our working world. Obviously, the flexible working bill words I never imagined when I started this out would even be on paper
Sure.
is landing on the 4th of April. So that is the vehicle. It's got so much more that we need to do to it.
Yeah.
So it's currently quite toothless. Businesses can still get out of it.
It's the foot in the door. It's opened it up.
Yeah, it's from day one for everyone. So it used to be 26 weeks in the job. You could sort of, please, sir, can I have some flexible working? Now it's from day one for everyone, not just mums.
Yeah.
But what we need is by default. So we need it to be on the onus to be on the employer to say why it can't work, as opposed to the onus being on the employee saying why it should work. And that's what I want to turn the dial on. But what I want more than anything is cultural change. I don't want to beat companies with a stick to change. I want them to lead the change. And I think the truth is, as you and I know, talent will lead that. If you don't create an environment where people want to work, Gen Z is going, no, I'm not coming to you. No. So it's not even their choice anymore.
So what can I do? What can people watching and listening do to help that change? You're just, opening up the bill. You're bringing the awareness. What can the people do to force that?
You can send letters to your MP around the flexible working bill. Say we want day one for everyone. Sorry, by default. Mm-hmm. You can get your company to sign the Equality and Human Rights Commission's Working Forward Pledge, which is just a statement of these bullet points, what we believe in. And it's the equivalent of dads and mums being considered.
Yeah, I can see that.
People, not just parents. It's a universal drive for that kind of equality. And you can follow my Flex Appeal journey and just share anything and everything I put out on LinkedIn, because what I have noticed is, because I can speak up and I am not a corporate cog, I am not somebody who is built to be an activist, an accidental activist. I'm human, I'm tired. I have 2 kids and a hamster called Siggy at home. And there's, I am just that woman who didn't see another way forward. I'm every woman who was shut down and suppressed within the workforce for daring to think, and I said this once before, daring to think that they could sustain or hold on to that something that they had worked towards their whole life. And my family, and I'm sure anybody listening's family, are your everything. They are top of the tree for me. But my career, it's my something.
Yeah.
And I want a working world that recognises that. A working world that I've existed in Holland. This is not, something that's new. It's not pioneering. This exists. And my final point was, I was on a press trip with a New York Times journalist a couple of months ago. And she looked around and she was like, what's with all these male nannies everywhere? And I was like, they are dads parenting. This is what equality looks like. And
that's a shocker.
I think that's what I want to see.
Yeah.
Like shared parental leave, like flexible working requests going through for you as well as me.
Yeah.
People existing in a working world that is founded on EQ as well as IQ.
Oh, that's awesome. I mean, one of the whys for me to do this program was for my children to watch this, be inspired. You've massively inspired me. You're a trailblazer. Well done, you keep going.
Very tired trailblazer.
Yeah, but you're doing it. You're on it.
I'm trailing.
And thank you for making time to come and speak with me today, because I could talk to you for a lot longer. But you're awesome, Anna.
Thank you. It's been so lovely meeting you.
You too.
Thank you.